right, and welcome back. This is Raul. This time around, we're going to continue our demonstration of the Doepfer A148 dual sample and hold. But this time, we're going to look at it in a different way. We're going to use it to process audio and create a sample rate reduction type effect. And then later on in the second part of our segment, we're going to look at how you can use this module with other waveforms going in the sample in. But the first part we're going to do is we're going to do the sample rate reduction, and for that we're actually going to bring in a track from my MP3 player out here. I'm going to patch it into the sample in. There we go. And then we're going to use as our trigger in, we're going to use a square wave, and the square wave we're using is in the high frequency or audible frequency. And if you want to hear what that kind of sounds like, let's go ahead and patch that. I'm going to bring my level down a little bit. So just so you can hear what the square wave sounds like all by itself. Here we go. There's our square wave. And I can adjust the frequency. Okay, so that's our square wave. But we're going to use that as our trigger source. So I'm going to patch that into trigger in. There we go. And now I'm going to bring my frequency all the way up, because that's going to be the least amount of sample rate reduction, and you'll hear that here in a moment. So I'm going to take my sample and hold out, and I'm going to actually start my track, and then I'm going to patch it in, so that way you'll hear it with as little sample rate reduction as possible. I'll turn my volume up a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so that's with the frequency all the way to the max. And that's about as dry as we can get with the signal. And it's slightly distorted. And that's part of the effect here. And then let's hear how this change in frequency is going to affect our signal. Because right now we just have sort of a slightly distorted effect right there. And the lower I go with my frequency over here on the square wave, the more distortion I get from the sample rate effect coming out of the sample and hold out into my mixer right there. And if I go all the way to the bottom, I'm going to hear something very distorted that I can't even recognize as my original track. So now I'm going to bring it up all the way again so we can hear pretty close to our dry signal. And you may recognize this track from one of the previous demos, the A189-1 voltage controlled bit modifier. This is a track that I did a few years ago. So that's what we're listening to here. Dry for the most part, but now I'm going to bring it down a little bit again so you can just kind of hear. So it's a fairly interesting effect, very distinctive. And I think it goes without saying that obviously you're not going to have as many options doing this type of sample rate reduction with this particular module as you would with a Doepfer A189-1 voltage control bit modifier. But just the mere fact that you can actually accomplish this with a sample and hold is a pretty cool kind of thing. Okay, so you're probably wondering too, well, why did he choose a square wave? Well, the truth is, for the most part, it does not work very well with the sine or the triangle. I tried it a little bit earlier and I didn't have much success, so I'm going to unpatch it here, and just so you can hear what I heard a little bit ago, here you go. So it sounds okay right there, like I can hear the normal dry signal, but when I start to move the frequency down a little bit, it ends right about there. So I don't really have that much leeway as far as adjusting the effect. It, for the most part, ends right there. and I lose my effect entirely. See, completely off. So, at least with the square wave, I had a little bit more leeway in terms of, you know, more sample rate reduction, less sample rate reduction. So let's see what it sounds like with the sine wave, because I'm fairly certain that the story was about the same with that one. So I'm going to go up a little bit. So I got a little bit of sample rate reduction there, and then right about there, I lose it again. So that was the choice for why I chose the square wave. To be perfectly honest, the saw and the inverted saw didn't actually do too bad a job. I'll let you hear the saw here real quick. So see, if I go all the way to the top, I have something of a non-processed signal going in, dry for the most part. If I bring it down, it is fairly close to what we had coming out from the square wave going into the trigger in. I can go all the way down to the bottom to where it's just sort of a little rumble or staticky type sound. And truth is going to be found to be about the same going in the inverted saw here. There we go. So we got very little sample rate reduction, then when I go all the way down, so there we go. Sample rate reduction going in. Now I happen to be using an audio track, but that's not the only thing, obviously, that you can patch into sample in. You could patch VCO into there. You could patch a noise source. You could patch VCO that you're already filtering into there. So there's tons of other possibilities. I'm just focusing on this particular type of processing for sample rate reduction right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my track, and that's going to take care of the sample rate reduction, at least with the sample and hold portion of the module. So let's hear what that sounds like going into the track and hold side of this module. So I'm going to patch my track into that, and then I'm going to take my sample and hold out from the sample and hold side, patch it into the track and hold side, take my same trigger, unpatch it from my inverted saw, patch it into my square again, bring my frequency all the way to the top, and then patch into my trigger in, and we should hear something a little different this time around. And there we have it, something different, pretty close to nothing. So let's bring it down a little bit, see if we get any movement here. And we're not getting much movement. Okay, so that may be characteristic of the track and hold portion. No, actually it has to do with the fact that I have not hit play on my track. Here we go. There we go. It's always the simple things. So there we have sort of a sample and hold, or sample rate reduction type effect here. There we go. If I bring this down, it does have a slightly different timbre than what we heard before. And just for our own knowledge, let's actually test it out with some of the other waveforms. We're going to go into triangle here. And we're actually getting some success on that one. If I bring it down. So on the track and hold side, it actually is fairly effective as a sample rate reducer. Maybe not 100% effective, but it is a little bit more useful. Like you can go a little bit further on the frequency dial, so it starts to get a little choppy right about here. Although that's kind of an interesting effect right there. And I know you heard that sound in case you're wondering and you didn't watch the variable or the voltage control bit modifier demo. That sound effect is actually part of the song. So I don't want you to think that I'm receiving phone calls or anything in the middle of this. Okay, so there we go. Let's see, we lost our signal. I think my track may have stopped. Let's start back up. There we go. All right, let me unpatch that, and we'll try a sine wave and see what kind of effects we have with that. There we go. So track and hold is being a little bit more forgiving as far as what waveform you choose, which is not such a bad thing. Let's try it with the saw wave, and then adjust the frequency. There we go. We're getting some fairly interesting effects with that. Unpatch the saw wave. Let's try inverted saw. Now we have very little sample rate reduction. Further we go to the left, more sample rate reduction we have. So in effect, you could actually have two flavors of sample rate reduction going into here if you wanted to. There we go. So that is our basic sample rate reduction type patch. I'm going to go ahead and stop my audio track. Stop. And let's unpatch some of these. And then we'll go into the next portion of our demo where we talk a little bit about different waveforms. I thought we'd go back and maybe just examine some of the other types of waveforms that you could use with the sample and hold module. I know in the previous demos we talked a little bit about basic sample and hold in terms of using it with a noise module where the notes that come out of here are fairly random, but it can also be used with any type of waveform going in. It doesn't have to always be a noise source going into the sample in. It can be anything, a waveform such as a inverted saw, sine, triangle, and you get slightly varied effects. So in the upcoming demo, and actually the last one of our sample and hold series, we're going to be looking at what these other waveforms can do for your sample and hold type effects. So stay tuned for that.